A nuclear detonation is one of the most devastating events imaginable, not only because of the immediate destruction it causes, but also due to the silent, long-term killer that follows: nuclear fallout. To understand how to survive such a catastrophe, it's crucial to first understand the threat itself. Many people think the main danger lies in the initial explosion, the flash, the shockwave, the fireball, but if you're far enough to survive that, your next enemy is invisible, tasteless, and odorless: radiation. When a nuclear bomb detonates, it sends out a burst of radiation and creates a cloud of radioactive particles. These particles, known as fallout, are picked up by wind currents and can drift for miles before settling back to the ground. This radioactive dust clings to buildings, vehicles, clothing, crops, and even your skin. Depending on the size of the explosion and the weather patterns, fallout can spread hundreds of miles from ground zero. That means people who weren't even near the blast can still face lethal consequences. Fallout contains radioactive isotopes such as cesium-137, iodine-131, and strontium-90, which can contaminate water, food, and air. These elements don't just make you sick temporarily. They can damage your DNA, cause severe burns, lead to thyroid cancer, organ failure, and ultimately death. In fact, fallout is most dangerous in the first 24 to 72 hours after the blast. This is when the radiation levels are at their highest. That's why sheltering in place immediately after a detonation is one of the most critical things you can do. There are two primary types of radiation to worry about: gamma rays and beta particles. Gamma rays can penetrate deeply and require thick materials like lead, concrete, or packed earth to block. Beta particles are weaker, but can cause serious skin and eye injuries on contact, and even more damage if inhaled or ingested. Exposure to high levels of either type can lead to acute radiation sickness or long-term illness. Many people falsely assume they'll know if they're exposed because of some sort of sensation or visible effect, but radiation doesn't work that way. You can walk through a hot zone and not feel a thing until symptoms begin hours or days later. By then, the damage is already done. Understanding the threat means recognizing that nuclear fallout is a silent killer. It spreads quickly, lingers for weeks, and doesn't give you a second chance. Only those who comprehend its behavior and take early, decisive action stand a real chance at survival. This is why preparation, not panic, must be your first response. When a nuclear event occurs, the single most important factor in survival, after immediate safety from the blast, is where you take shelter. Fallout radiation can't be seen, smelled, or tasted, but it can be blocked. That's why having a safe shelter ready in advance is not a luxury, it's a necessity. The primary goal is to put as much dense material between you and the radioactive particles as possible, and to stay inside for as long as the danger remains high, especially in the first 72 hours. The best shelters are underground. Basements, root cellars, and specially built fallout shelters provide the highest level of protection. Why? Because the earth itself acts as a powerful shield against radiation. Just a few feet of soil or concrete can dramatically reduce radiation exposure. If you don't have access to an underground space, the next best option is to shelter in a central room of your home with no windows, ideally on the lowest floor. Use whatever materials you have: books, furniture, heavy doors, bricks, to thicken the walls and ceiling. Radiation shielding is all about density and mass. The more, the better. Time is another factor. Fallout loses its intensity rapidly in the first few days. In fact, radiation levels drop by about 90% after the first 72 hours. So your shelter doesn't just need to be protective. It needs to be livable for at least 3 full days, ideally up to 2 weeks. That means it must have space, air circulation without letting in contaminated air, and be stocked with essentials like food, water, first aid supplies, and sanitation tools. Many people make the mistake of thinking their home is automatically safe. But regular windows, thin drywall, and wide-open living spaces offer little protection from radiation. If a nuclear explosion happens, you may have only minutes to act. That's why it's critical to prepare your shelter in advance, not during the chaos. Don't overlook the importance of sealing your shelter. Fallout can enter through cracks, vents, and windows carried by wind or dust. Sealing off these entry points with plastic sheeting, duct tape, or even garbage bags can help prevent contamination inside. Your goal is to stay in a clean zone until outside levels have dropped to safer thresholds. In short, your survival after a nuclear event hinges on where you take cover. A properly prepared shelter isn't just a hiding place. It's your barrier between life and radiation. Build it now, reinforce it, know how to get to it fast, because when the time comes, hesitation is deadly. In a nuclear fallout scenario, survival depends heavily on what you have with you. Once you're in shelter, you won't be able to run out for supplies. Roads may be impassable, stores will be empty or unsafe, and fallout contamination will make venturing outside extremely dangerous. That's why assembling a week emergency supply kit before disaster strikes is absolutely essential. It's not about convenience, it's about staying alive when every resource becomes limited or inaccessible. First and foremost, you need clean drinking water. The standard recommendation is 1 gallon per person per day, so for 2 weeks, that's 14 gallons per person. This water must be stored in sealed food-grade containers and kept in your shelter or close to it. Contaminated water can carry radioactive particles that harm you from the inside out, so purification methods, such as portable water filters, purification tablets, or even boiling, should also be included in your kit in case you're forced to source water later. Next is food. Choose non-perishable, calorie-dense options like canned meats, beans, vegetables, rice, pasta, oats, peanut butter, and survival rations. Focus on foods that require little to no cooking and minimal water to prepare. Don't forget a manual can opener. Many people stock canned goods but overlook this simple tool. Include high-energy snacks and comfort foods as well. In a high-stress situation, morale can be as important as nutrition. Medical supplies are another critical component. A well-stocked first aid kit should include bandages, antiseptics, gauze, gloves, tweezers, pain relievers, and any prescription medications you or your family need. Include burn cream, anti-nausea medication, and eye drops. Radiation exposure can cause all of these issues. If possible, add potassium iodide tablets, which help protect the thyroid from absorbing radioactive iodine, a major contributor to cancer after fallout exposure. Communication tools are also vital. A battery-powered or hand-crank emergency radio allows you to receive updates on radiation levels, government instructions, and weather changes. Flashlights and extra batteries, or better yet, solar-powered lights, will help you function in darkness, since you'll likely need to turn off electricity to prevent drawing attention or because of widespread grid failure. Finally, sanitation. Include heavy-duty trash bags, moist towelettes, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and a bucket-style emergency toilet. In confined spaces, poor hygiene can quickly lead to illness. This kit isn't just a box of supplies, it's your lifeline. Without it, even the best shelter may become a prison. With it, you give yourself and your loved ones the best possible chance to endure the worst and emerge alive on the other side. In a nuclear fallout scenario, simply being indoors is not enough. The air outside will likely be filled with radioactive particles, tiny bits of matter that have been contaminated by radiation and are carried by wind and dust. These particles can enter your shelter through the smallest openings, settle on surfaces, and continue to emit harmful radiation. That's why one of the most critical actions you can take after securing shelter is to properly seal and shield it. This effort can drastically reduce your radiation exposure and increase your chances of survival. Start by identifying and blocking every possible entry point for outside air. Windows, doors, vents, and cracks around walls or ceilings are all potential infiltration paths. Use plastic sheeting, duct tape, weather stripping, garbage bags, or even heavy towels to seal these gaps. The goal is to create a contained, protected environment, a clean zone, inside your shelter where radioactive dust cannot penetrate. Even something as simple as taping garbage bags over windows and vents can significantly reduce contamination. Once sealed, shielding becomes your next priority. Shielding is all about creating physical barriers that reduce the amount of radiation penetrating your shelter. The thicker and denser the material between you and the outside world, the better. Concrete, bricks, sandbags, dirt, books, water containers, even stacked furniture. All of these can help block or absorb radiation. Stack materials along outside walls, against doors, and especially over any windows. Cover as much surface area as you can. If you're in a basement, consider reinforcing the ceiling above with heavy items or layers of material to add extra protection from fallout settling on the roof. Air circulation is also a concern. While it's vital to seal off contaminated air, you'll still need some ventilation to avoid suffocation or buildup of carbon dioxide, especially in small spaces. Try to balance protection with airflow using makeshift air filters, like layering cloth or charcoal over air intakes, can help reduce particle intake. Just make sure those filters can be changed or cleaned without exposing the interior to fallout. Lighting and visibility will be limited if you're fully sealed in, so prepare for a dark environment. Powered lights or solar lanterns stored in advance will help. And keep everything you need, food, water, medical supplies, within the sealed area so you don't have to exit once the shelter is closed. The hours and days after a nuclear event are not the time for improvisation. Sealing and shielding your shelter correctly could mean the difference between contamination and survival. It's not just about staying indoors. It's about staying protected from the invisible enemy outside. Knowing what to do immediately after a nuclear blast is just as important as preparing beforehand. The decisions you make in the minutes and hours following an explosion can mean the difference between life and death. Many people assume they'll have time to figure things out as events unfold, but the reality is, once a nuclear device detonates, every second counts. Panic leads to poor decisions, so you need to have a plan and know the steps to take without hesitation. If you're outdoors when the blast happens, your first priority is to protect yourself from the initial effects. The flash of light will be blinding and can cause permanent eye damage if you look directly at it. Drop to the ground immediately, face down, and cover your head with your arms. Keep your mouth open to reduce the pressure from the blast wave on your eardrums. Stay down until the shock wave passes, which might take several seconds or more depending on your distance from ground zero. After the blast, don't run toward windows or outside to look. Fallout begins to descend within minutes, especially if the bomb exploded at or near ground level. If you're caught outside, your goal is to get indoors as quickly as possible, preferably into a structure with thick walls, a basement, or even an underground parking garage. Any building is better than being exposed, but the more shielding between you and the outside, the better. Once inside, go to the most central part of the building, away from windows and external walls. Stay there. Do not go back outside under any circumstances. Fallout is most dangerous during the first 24 hours when radiation levels are highest. Even brief exposure to this radioactive dust can result in serious health effects. Tune in to emergency broadcasts if you have a radio or battery-powered device. Authorities may provide crucial updates about the blast location, safe evacuation routes, radiation levels, or shelter-in-place orders. Never rely on social media or hearsay during a nuclear event. Only official communication should guide your actions. Time is your best defense. Radiation loses its strength rapidly after the first few days. If your shelter is well stocked and secure, it's safest to remain inside for at least 72 hours before even considering venturing out. Leaving too early could expose you to lethal levels of radiation. Survival isn't just about tools or shelters. It's about keeping a clear head and following the right steps under pressure. Knowing exactly what to do after a blast could be the most critical prep of all. After surviving the initial blast and securing yourself in a shelter, your next priority is decontamination and ongoing radiation monitoring. Fallout doesn't just float in the air, it clings to your skin, your clothes, your hair, and anything else it touches. These radioactive particles continue to emit dangerous radiation even after settling. So removing them from your body and environment is absolutely vital to avoid internal exposure or prolonged contamination. If you were outdoors when the fallout began, you are likely contaminated. The first step is to carefully remove your outer clothing. This alone can eliminate up to 90% of radioactive particles from your body. Do it slowly and cautiously, turning garments inside out to avoid shaking particles into the air. Place the clothing in a sealed plastic bag and store it as far away from your living area as possible. Next, wash your body with clean, preferably lukewarm water. Use soap if it's available, but don't scrub aggressively. Doing so could push radioactive material deeper into the skin. Pay special attention to areas where fallout can collect, such as hair, under fingernails, elbows, and behind the ears. Avoid using hair conditioner as it can bind radioactive particles to your hair, making it harder to wash them out. If water is limited, use wet wipes or clean cloths to remove visible dust and debris from the skin. If you have access to a Geiger counter or radiation detector, use it to check yourself and your shelter regularly. This can help you identify hot spots where contamination may be higher and take corrective action. If a device isn't available, rely on guidance from emergency broadcasts, which may issue alerts about rising or falling radiation levels in your area. Decontamination also applies to food, water, and any supplies brought in from the outside. Only consume items that were sealed and stored before the blast or brought in after being properly cleaned. Avoid fresh produce, open water sources, or any food exposed to air or dust during the fallout period. Radiation inside the body, through inhalation or ingestion, is far more dangerous than external exposure. Hygiene becomes even more critical in a sealed shelter. Change clothes when possible, store waste safely, and keep your living area as clean and dust-free as possible. Even without visible signs of danger, fallout can still be present. Radiation is invisible, but it leaves clues. The key is vigilance. By removing contamination early and monitoring your environment consistently, you don't just survive, you reduce the long-term health risks that come with living through a nuclear event.